Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful. Let me start with some macro thoughts. Citigroup, something big and fundamental has changed in the markets. You can say that again. Markets used to be self-limiting, but they aren't anymore. In a new presentation, Citigroup strategist Matt King argues that the liquidity issue is a pervasive one that expands beyond fixed income and cannot be solely attributed to shrinking bank balance sheets. In the 42-page presentation, King points to increasing concentration and one-way positioning by large investors as a major factor behind current liquidity woes. The crux of this argument is that markets used to be self-limiting. Prices of securities would move up to a point where their yields would become unattractive, at which time investors would trim some of their positions, causing prices to go down and yields to recover. Now the intense search for returns has altered that dynamic, with investors chasing inflows as a means of getting higher prices and higher profits. Interesting piece, and I'll go and try and find a copy of the original and we can come back to that. Xing from China, abstract expressionism, PBOC style. This is about the Chinese renminbi. Let me put up this very abstract image. That was tweeted. Home thoughts go back to Peter Shaffer, The Royal Hunt of the Sun. Reason being, when I walked in this morning, there was a spectacular sunrise, and I'll show you the photograph that I took, but it doesn't do justice to what I saw. Have you ever climbed a mountain in full armor? That's what we did. Him going first the whole way up a tiny path into the clouds, with drops sheer on both sides into nothing. For hours we crept forward like blind men, the sweat freezing on our faces, lugging skittery, leaking horses, and pricked all the time for the ambush that would tip us into death. Each turn of the path it grew colder, the friendly trees of the forest dropped away, and there were only pines. Then they went too, and there just scrubby little bushes standing up in ice. All round us the rocks began to whine in the cold, and always above us or below us those filthy condor birds, hanging on the air with great tasseled wings. 4 days like that, groaning, not speaking, the breath a blade in our lungs. 4 days, slowly, like flies on a wall, limping flies, dying flies, up an endless wall of rock, a tiny army lost in the creases of the moon. That made me think of the view from the top of a Lockway mountain that I took. I'll put up that image. It was extraordinary. As we sat atop there, you could see the landscape in front of you. This is the photograph I took this morning. Rise and shine, good morning world, I tweeted. And the Smithsonian tweeted, catch the peak of the Perseid meteor shower with insight from Smithsonian Mac. Political reflections, Michael Anti, aftermath of the Tianjin blast. It looks like a film out of a movie, a Mad Max movie or something. I like this tweet from Sam Khalidi, if the Titanic sank in 2015, and have a look at how the image is put up with it. G.S. Fandiari, Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif met Assad in Damascus, discussed fight against terrorism, and seems a bit of movement in this whole issue. Let's see how it plays out. The Saudis are saying the red line is that he has to go, and I suspect, because there's been a lot of toing and froing between Saudi Arabia and Russia, that they could find somebody to sit at the apex of the system who's not him, but I think it's going to be difficult. The National is tweeting, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed holds vital talks with the Yemeni president. That's interesting as well. And then a very interesting piece in the New York Times, what the West gets wrong about Russia. When George Kennan wrote his famous long telegram, his 1946 letter to Secretary of State James F. Burns, that laid the foundation for America's containment policy against the Soviet Union, he mentioned Joseph Stalin just 3 times, despite the fact that by then the Russian leader ran his country like an emperor. 7 decades on, Stalin's current heir, Vladimir V. Putin, finds his name emblazoned on nearly every page of the myriad memos and papers, struggling to understand the mindset driving Russia's strategic behavior. To understand Mr. Putin, the thinking goes, is to understand Russia. But is that quite right? In the heady days of the Cold War, Americans tended to view Soviet decision-making as a black box. You know what goes in, you know what comes out, but you're clueless about what is happening inside. Soviet policy was thus believed to be both enigmatic and strategic. There was little room for personality or personal philosophy. Understanding the system was the only way. According to Gleb Pavlovsky, Mr. Putin's former spin doctor extraordinaire, these days the Kremlin is still enigmatic, but no longer strategic. For Mr. Pavlovsky, Kremlin policy is fashioned rather like the music of a jazz group. Its continuing improvisation is an attempt to survive the latest crises. What runs the Kremlin today is not Mr. Putin's will, but his ambiguity. Wars among different power factions, as a result, have escalated. In Mr. Pavlovsky's reading, Russia today is neither an ideological warrior seeking to remake the world order, nor a hard-nosed realist desperately defending its sphere of influence. That's interesting. Far from grand strategy, what animates Mr. Putin's Kremlin is the assertion of its right to break international rules. I'm not sure that's correct. In fact, breaking the rules without being punished is the Kremlin's peculiar definition of being a great power. Kremlin's Deputy Chief of Staff, Volodin, concisely summed up things when he explained to international analysts at a private forum in Valdai last year, "There is no Russia today, there is no Putin." In Mr. Pavlovsky's view, the experience of the catastrophic collapse of the Soviet Union, rather than geopolitical interests or values, is the key for understanding Russia's strategic behavior and the inner logic of Mr. Putin's regime. The Kremlin is populated not by mere survivors of the post-Soviet transition, but by survivalists, people who think in terms of worst-case scenarios, who believe that the next disaster is just around the corner, who thrive on crises, who are addicted to extraordinary situations and no-rules politics. That complex and unpredictable context, rather than the vagaries of Mr. Putin's mind alone, is the key to understanding contemporary Russian politics. I concluded by saying who is encircling whom, and that Vladimir, the geopolitical grandmaster, simply did not see the oil warfare specialist POTUS coming. And I spoke about this on the 12th of January, but when I said the oil warfare specialist, President Obama wrestled crude to below $50 a barrel, and with that effected a chokehold on Vladimir Putin. Top US General, Russia is the most dangerous threat. General Ray Odierno, outgoing Army Chief of Staff, said Wednesday that Russia is the top military threat to the US. "I believe Russia is the most dangerous," he said at a Pentagon briefing. So still focused on Russia. International markets, currency rout goes global as Yen sees risk of 50% loss on China. Volatility measures are already signaling rising distress in emerging markets. If this is the beginning of a new phase in Beijing's currency policy, it would be the biggest development in the currency world this year. Latin America is a particular concern because of the region's high levels of corporate debt. Jen recommends selling the real, which I've been saying, rupee and South African rand, all of which I'm bearish about. Currency markets, the euro is at 111.20, dollar index is a little bit higher, 96.50, Japanese yen 124.52, Swissy 0.9769 when I checked last. The pound a little bit firmer, 156.28.50. Aussie, let's have a look where that is, because that's been going up and down. 73.50. And headed low in my view. Indian rupee topped 65 for the first time since September 2013. South Korean won 1176.60. The Rial 347.64. Egyptian pound 782.93. And the South African rand 1272.53. Put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. My target remains at 110. Euro dollar had a strong rebound, in part because I think of the repricing of the euro versus the renminbi. But I think that might well peter out. Holger, again, excellent images. Italy bond future flash crash grabs headlines. Prices fell from 136.60 to 135.75 in the space of a minute. And then he's saying China-driven investor fright sends German two-year yields to a record low. Dollar Canada, let's have a look at that. That's at now 129.91. I'm very bearish. I'm looking for a move to 140. Commodity markets, gold 11.21. I think can still rebound higher, as high as 11.50 on renewed currency warfare or perception of the same. I remain of the view that we're facing a meltdown in the oil markets, that it's in free fall, and I think the end is nigh for many oil-based rentier economies. The oil economies are going to contract, currencies which have already collapsed are going to be routed, and that Greek-style austerity will be the order of the day as the meltdown is coming. And on the 10th of August, I said the end is nigh for crude oil and oil producers from Caracas to Luanda, from Riyadh to Abuja. Quoted Kapuscinski, says, if the crowd disperses, goes home, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. And I'm saying the revolution is only just beginning. I think it speaks to why, for example, the Angolan government is so nervous. Crude oil, I think you continue to sell rebounds. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Cantonese roast duck features soft and savoury flesh and intensely flavoured skin. This is Bloomberg, courtesy of the duck and rice. And I like this, the Villeray tourbillon cylindrique Geosphere is a work of art, indeed it is. Coming to sub-Saharan Africa, Africa Confidential says Africa's economic policy makers are grappling with two main challenges: rising youth unemployment and the falling price of export commodities. And I spoke about the currency impact when I wrote that piece, Sub-Saharan African currency bloodbath. But, I expect further pressure, and I'll come to it because there's an interesting South African story about this. Mugabe increasingly isolated as in Zimbabwe, and the recent snub by President Obama when he visited the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa demonstrated the isolation that Mugabe is suffering among his peers, most of whom are now much younger than him. If African leaders were united, they would not have allowed Obama to visit the AU HQ without the courtesy of including or seeking the permission of the chair. While the American president used the technicality that he was paying a visit to the AU Secretariat, the truth is he was avoiding Mugabe with the blessings of African leaders. Job cut backlash in South Africa pits mining CEOs against Zuma. Relations between South Africa's government and the mining industry are unraveling as a commodity price rout derails plans by President Zuma's administration to create millions of jobs and pare a 25% jobless rate. Public slanging matches ensued, and I agree with this, and I think this applies to many African countries where I don't think the government understands the gravity of the challenges in the industry. South African oil share got tonked yesterday, down 3.16%. It's now only up 1.607% year to date. Dollar rand, last time I checked, 12.72, but I think it's going to 14, and I'll stand by that. If confirmed, we've just seen the first beheading of a Western hostage held by the Sinai province. It's the Egyptian group which changed its name from Ansar Beit al-Maqdis, after it pledged allegiance to the Islamic State. I'll put up a photograph I found online, image purportedly shows Islamic State before the beheading of this hostage Egyptian pound. Steady as you like. The Egyptian stock market fell sharply 2.12% yesterday. So South Africa and Egypt fell. It's down 11.37% year to date. Nigerian all shares down 10.24% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 3.98% year to date. Sudan's central bank is saying they've received a total of $1 billion from Saudi Arabia in July and August, the Sudanese State Minister of Finance said on Wednesday. The central bank received investment deposits of $500 million in July from Saudi Arabia and $500 million in August. That's an interesting development. Club Mozambique tweeted, "Mozambique and Ruby is the centerpiece of Dior's exquisite new bracelet." It certainly is. Condé Nast traveller, few places on earth are as wild or dramatic as the Elephant Coast. I like the photograph, I hope you do too. And Telegraph pics stunning images by wildlife photographer Paul Goldstein for World Elephant Day. And this certainly is my favourite one, as you see the sun behind the elephant. Barclays Bank, Jeremy Awori, Barclays tweeted Jeremy Awori announcing the half-year results for 2015. Let me take you through them. Barclays reported profit after tax accelerated 7.533%. Interesting, total assets grew 9.96%, quite anemic when you compare it to some other. First half loans and advances up just 3.97%. Profit before tax up 5.29%. Profit after tax up 7.533%. EPS up 7.69%, and they're paying an interim dividend of 20 cents a share. I said assets plus 9.96%, loans and advances anemic plus 3.97%. However, I do think Barclays can accelerate earnings from here. Diamond Trust reported first half profit after tax increased 10.67%. Their total assets expanded and very close to Barclays now, up 30.27%. Loans and advances up to 161.98 billion, and that's considerably ahead of someone like Barclays. Loan loss provision hiked 135.87%. Foreign exchange trading income up 41.84%. Profit before tax up 13.72%. Profit after tax up 10.76%. First half EPS up just 2.936%. That's because of a bonus issue. Now look at these results from Sassini Tea and Coffee. Profit after tax. Now they've issued 12-month earnings, 10-month earnings. Why? I'm not so sure. Profit after tax up 935%. Other income 874.44 million versus zero the previous time. First half profit before tax up 990%. Profit after tax up 935.6%. EPS up 857%. Cash and equivalents at the end of the reporting period was 1.1 trillion shillings. Company commentary: increase in profitability and operating activities, restructuring of non-performing assets. Year has been characterized by a biting drought, severely affected the operations of the tea division. Production volumes in both tea and coffee divisions dropped considerably. Sale of Wahenya Estate and part of Mwega Estate was completed. They're paying a dividend of 1 shilling a share. It's a cheap share, and I think the fact that they've started to offload some land might well prove a catalyst for the repricing higher. Safaricom has rallied 12.23% since August the 6th. Big strong rebound, good to see. Kenya Airways has rebounded 18.62% since August 5, still below the price it was at when they released those full year numbers, but they've come back quite strongly. Have a look at that interview I did with Buvi at the time of the results. Kenya shilling 101.25. Nairobi all share retreated 0.19% yesterday. It's down 5.083% year to date, but it's rallied 6% since August 5. NSE 20 retreated 0.46% yesterday. It's down 11.99% year to date, but has rallied 4.2% since August 5. Car Investor says 1 acre on Mombasa Road goes for $100 million, $60 million on Gong Road, while a Greek island is going for only $4.5 million. Says it all, doesn't it? Once again, thanks for stopping by. I'm always grateful.